All right. Hi, everyone. This is Ramanuj Mukherjee from Law Sikho, and with me today I have Rachita Maker. Rachita is Vice President at Tata Communications, Head of Legal Operations and Compliances, and she has worked in several other companies before, and she has many years of experience, almost 20 years, I believe, and it's really a privilege to have Rachita today with us. And we are going to learn so much from her about innovations and how the landscape is changing in in-house teams with respect to how technology is disrupting the established practices and what's new, right? So, welcome, Rachita. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself? Where are you from, and how did you come into law? A brief, overview of your legal career so far, and then we can proceed with the topic.
Thanks, Ramanuj. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. It's really exciting. I did my graduated in law about 20 years ago from Government Law College in Mumbai. And at that point in time, I thought that I will never practice law again because I was quite disturbed by the whole court justice system in India. But law had its own attraction to me, and I came back to the legal world. I started off my career with legal outsourcing pretty much at a time that outsourcing was a taboo word. The word LPO or ALSPs as we know them today did not exist. And I think it was one of the best decisions in my life. Over the last 20 years, I've worked across organizations, but more so with clients and general counsels in various industries ranging from healthcare to technology to telecom to banking, and really helping them solve complex legal problems by using efficient processes and using technology, and really seeing the growth from them. So that's a little bit about me. Today I head legal operations and compliance globally at Tata Communications. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
So, what kind of work is it that you do, Rachita? Like, if you can give us how does your typical day look like, and what does your what are the challenges, like, just to for people to get a feel of what the work you do.
Sure. So as the global head of compliance and legal operations, my typical day is never the same. It and it the work never ends. It can range from solving day-to-day BAU questions, which could relate to are there certain sanctions on certain countries, or are what are our policies being compliant to? Could be some of those questions. Versus what is the kind of technology we are going to roll out. So sometimes we could be working on fairly complex technology implementation processes. Sometimes we could be working on compliance related engagements. It can absolutely vary, but what is typically true of my day every day is it's extremely collaborative. I have to work with the business, with different people within the organization. So that remains constant. The other thing that remains constant is being abreast with everything that's happening in the industry. The industry is going through very dynamic and quick changes, and we've seen that over the last 5 years it has changed even quicker, and it's especially in the last 6 months I think the changes have been accelerated. So that thing is another thing that remains very constant, is to stay on top of what is happening. The other thing is to always think in terms of the organization. As lawyers, it is important that we're supporting the business for growth, and that's where we come in, and that's something that again remains constant. But I think the day-to-day problems obviously vary depending on what is happening on that particular day.
Okay. uh, my thought at this point is that you said there are a lot of changes happening, and you said in 5 years and things have been happening, and then recently changes have become even faster. So if you can highlight some of these large scale changes or some massive trends that you see that people should be picking up.
Yeah, so some of obviously, I mean, regulatory changes have impacted the legal industry, but I think one of the biggest changes is that technology is disrupting the way lawyers have been doing work. Um, we've seen this happen a lot in the West, and it is catching up soon in India too. I don't think that there is anything that you can solve a legal problem without any use of technology. So legal departments, in-house teams are expected to use technology to a much larger extent. So when I speak with my boss, when he was in the peak of his career, he had a secretary who would do all the typing, the printouts, etc. for him, right? But today, if you look at lawyers of this generation, they are expected to even negotiate a contract while each person is looking at the screen, and they are making real time changes. So the world has changed a lot. So that is the key. And it's just not digitization, it's artificial intelligence. And as lawyers, it would do us a lot of benefit. There's a lot of conversations about robots coming and taking lawyers job. Well, that's not going to happen, but certain tasks are definitely going to be taken over. And as lawyers, it would do a lot of benefit for us if we were on top of the technology, rather than letting the technology rule us. So it is now an expectation for lawyers to understand how these tools and technologies work and make it use to be more powerful for them. The other thing, I mean, there is a whole new concept of T-shaped lawyers, which or some even call it the O-shaped lawyers. So historically, if you knew the law and you had the in-depth knowledge of a particular area of law, you were considered to be a specialist, and it mattered. Today, you need to go beyond just the law, and you're expected as a lawyer to have far more skills. You're expected to support the business and help it grow. The CLO has a seat at the table, and he's expected to advise and manage risk. You're expected to be more collaborative with the business, so you can't hinder and say, oh, this is a risk, but you have to kind of figure out a way how do you mitigate the risk and help the business do that. Technology I already spoke about. Lawyers are expected to have project management skills. They are expected to be better negotiators and communicators. So they are expected to be able to read data, analyze data, and make predictions based on that. So the expectation from a lawyer, which was I think 10, 15 years ago, has really evolved and changed. And I think, unfortunately, our legal education hasn't changed at that pace, and to kind of support that. So there's a huge shift in the industry as such.
If you can give us like a few very specific examples of how you have seen, innovations and technology changing the legal work, like maybe three things that come to your mind that the things were
Sure.
very different 5 years back and the way it's now is very different in your
Sure.
experience.
So if we look at doing, let's take an example of doing M&A due diligence, right? Um, um, uh, when I graduated, and that was a long time ago, about 20 years ago. But even if you look at 5 years ago, people would 5 years ago it was digitized. When I graduated, it used to be a room full of boxes with paper documents, and you reviewed it and you prepared your report. It changed over a period of time. We
Yeah,
created
yeah,
digital
it's true.
data rooms. People still went through them, still read through each of these, and created a report. Today, there are tools in the market which will actually review and read each of these documents, and at least churn out a first level of report that lawyers can then review, start highlighting, focus on key issue areas. So that is one area where there used to, there used to be a need of whenever there was an M&A due diligence, there would be an army of lawyers, depending on the size of due diligence. Could be anywhere from 4 or 5 lawyers to, if it was a larger due diligence, maybe 20, 25 lawyers who are like reading through documents, looking at key issues, trying to find the needle in the haystack. But today that has you have tools and technologies that would actually skim through your contracts, skim through your other corporate documents, and provide you at least that first level of report that could then be need to be read by lawyers. And so that has changed. Similarly, I mean, recently, right? Which when the whole COVID pandemic hit in March, most of the organizations were struggling to figure out what did their contracts talk about in force majeure clauses, and particularly to the word pandemic, did they have any information about that or not? Again, 5 years ago, somebody would have to, figure out where these documents are, try and collect them, and then read through each of these documents, even if it was on computer. Today, you have tools which will go through all these contracts, pick out your force majeure clauses, and give you exactly what the clause in the provision says, and then the lawyers are just making a judgment based on the information they have available. So this is on the due diligence or the contract review side. There has been an increased change in, let's say, your contract review and negotiation side too. You have tools, and this is something that most of us in-house lawyers do for a living, but that, and we need to learn how we adapt and use this to our advantage. But you have tools which will actually mark up and redline the document, and give you first level review once you actually train the tool as to what your provisions and positions are at any point in time. So I think those are, and the day isn't far when, you have both parties on both ends negotiating over an AI tool, where at least the first two levels of negotiation back and forth are done by using AI, and then when you have your critical points of
Oh,
negotiation left,
right,
is
right.
when lawyers will actually get on the phone or on a video conference and talk about it. What this is going to help us do is really help us scale very quickly, right? Because today deals get delayed. Sorry, are you
Voice.
saying?
Yeah, yeah. Now I can hear you. Sorry, there
Okay.
was. Yeah.
So I think it's going to help us scale, and it is going to help us grow very quickly, and help the business be get their deals closed quicker. I think that's one of the key things that each business really cares about. So that's the other area that I see a major change and shift happening in the industry. It's already happening. There are already tools out there. So that's definitely going to be the case. And we haven't seen this, but I think somewhere down the line, the online court system is also going to become more prevalent, hopefully after the pandemic. So that's something that, when we got into the pandemic, and this was very interesting, I heard one of the judges talk about it. They said the last pandemic was about 100 years ago. And if you looked at most of the industries, they had evolved from what the last pandemic was, and now. But if you actually look at the judiciary system, it has pretty much stayed the same, right? Which is a sad state of affairs. It's nothing to be very proud of, but definitely something that we need to think about and care about. And generally, I think where technology is going to help a lot of lawyers is in the space of getting your workflows automated. A lot of times, a lot of time is spent by lawyers trying to coordinate, get approvals, move a document from one end to the other. So there are a lot of automated workflow systems that we've specifically looked at within our organization, and I'm sure I know a lot of other legal departments spend a lot of time on, is managing those workflow in an automated way. So again, as to save time, it could be within regulatory, it could be within IP,
Right.
whatever you have.
So two thoughts come to mind. One is that from what you're saying, it seems like all the work that young lawyers do, like right after graduation, all of that is getting done by the software. So what do they do? Number one, and basically, due diligence was, even I joined trilegal after graduation in a law firm, and the first work I was given was due diligence, because you do due diligence, and that's how you learn some basic stuff. You get involved, like, you get a view of that work. So that's one, that how are young lawyers going to get trained, because they will be expected to do things right away, right? There's no question of training with these things. And then redlining, reviewing, all of the stuff you said is pretty much what very young lawyer, first year, second year lawyers did. So how are they going to now? And you don't need so many junior lawyers. You need only senior lawyers who are going to do more high level work. So how is that going to work out? The second thing that came to my mind while listening to you was, you know there's a lot of workflow automation is happening, but given, especially after the pandemic, like, I think collaboration tools should be seeing a lot more interest, because if you look at the software industry, and we are working from home increasingly, and remote work is becoming a norm. How are collaboration tools shaping up? So two questions for you.
Yeah, I think your first question on what do young lawyers do is a very important one, and it's something that all of us in the industry as leaders need to spend time on and understand. As to um, how do we shape, and this is the point that I made on, our legal education system is not keeping up with the pace of how things are changing. I was at a seminar where I had a young graduate tell me that, but I have no idea what AI does. What does it even mean? How does it work in the legal world? So you basically come in and you start learning how to use these tools. You will still have need of lawyers who will have to train these tools, who will have to be able to guide them, and who will have to use these tools to you have to take the output and use it and understand it, right? So I think the lawyer who can actually use these tools for their benefit are the lawyers who have the most of the superpowers, right? They'll be these new age jet set lawyers who can do so much more. So, and I also feel the younger age is born with technology, right? I mean, if they use technology with far more ease than the more senior lawyers do. So I think they have a lot of potential. They also have the potential to to see. One of the things that is a problem today is that justice is not available to everybody easily, and we can actually use technology to scale and make it available to people much more easily. So will there be a need for multiple lawyers? Maybe not in doing a due diligence, but there are other areas of law and the justice and the legal system which is not easily available to people. I mean, so many people don't even stay away from the court system because, one, it's cumbersome, two, it's very expensive. So if you can look at various tools and technologies and say, how do I scale this and make it available to a billion people, you are actually going to have a much better solution. So I think that's the other thing to think about. And definitely, I think the legal education system needs to change, and needs to change very, very quickly.
Yeah.
um, your next question was on the collaboration.
Okay,
Sorry.
before we go to the one, like, just on this topic, I just wanted to make one observation, is that uh, yeah, like, using technology is one thing, but beyond using technology, people need real skills. Like, if you are doing due diligence, maybe, sitting and reading documents is not the skill. Like, the skill that you now want to rely on is that you are able to judge whether something that is highlighted by a machine is actually a red flag issue, or what
Yeah,
is to be done with that, right? So it's second level knowledge that is more important. And
your judgment skills are going to play a far more role than actually reading the document.
correct. So you confirming it, applying the business logic, the legal logic, and coming up with a strategy as to how you're going. Say the system found that there is a certain non-compliance. Now, how do you put it into a in your shareholder agreement, or how are you going to negotiate this point with the other side? Coming up with the strategies. I think these things would be important. And so our, like, whatever training system was there within law firms, within law legal chambers, that will get disrupted, because you cannot train people the same old way that, okay, you sit here and observe us and learn, and they have to come a little more prepared, which is where I'm also very happy, because of the business I am in, that we do train people into exactly these kind of things.
And
um,
Ramanuj, I think rightly so, right? I mean, who liked reading all those documents and
exactly.
hundreds of them,
Yeah, it was a
and then
nightmare for me, like,
summarizing what the clause stated, and then go to your senior and then wait for.
whether every document is stamped adequately or not.
I mean, I think these tasks that are being taken away
Yeah,
are tasks which are honestly no lawyer ever went to law school to do.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
we didn't do that. So in a way, it is good. But you're right. The need to be ready and be on the ground with your skills, knowledge, etc. is going to be far faster than it was in the past, right? So you could go through after your graduation 2 3 years, you could do your due diligences and scale through the system, and that would be fine, but that is not going to happen anymore.
yeah. You have to come more prepared to the
Yes.
marketplace. Yeah. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. Okay, so now the other question on collaboration. I think lawyers don't fare very well on collaboration tools, or even using collaboration tools. Like, there are a lot of tools that are even freely available out there, open source collaboration tools. It's not only a question of costs and stuff like that, but lawyers generally prefer to work by throwing files at each other, kind of situation, or sending emails now, right? And sending documents to each other through email. So do you think that collaboration tools makes a difference, and what's the future?
I mean, I think there is no option anymore, to be honest. And the pandemic had kind of thrown us in a way. Unfortunately, it happened in a horrible way that we had a pandemic, and we were left with no option. And you're right, Ramanuj. Lawyers don't do very well with, forget collaboration tools. They don't do well with any kind of tool. It requires a lot of hand holding, a lot of training and teaching. So whenever we are implementing something new, it that one, there has to be a vision from the top that we are going to move to a different way of working. You're right, people, there are lawyers I still know would love to print out hundreds and hundred pages of documents and mark it up with pen, and then ask somebody who's junior to them to make the changes, right? But that's impossible to do anymore. Even if you print it out at home, who are you going to mark it up and give it to? At the end of the day, you will have to do it yourself on the system. So I think we are not left with an option. I think there's a lot of hand holding that's required with lawyers. It has become faster because now, if you need to work on something and you need to send it out, you're not going to have be able to procrastinate it. So it's just the need of the hour and the necessity. So definitely a future. Also, these tools. I mean, one of the things that all of us are also struggling with, right? It's one thing that I can do. A lot of legal roles tend to be also individual contributor roles, so it's easier to work. But how do I go about training newer people in my organization? That definitely needs some level of collaboration and some level of where you're able to look at the same document together and finish that. So I think it's not the future anymore; it's the present. It's now, it's happening. The change will happen far faster than it did, maybe even 2 years ago. It's there's no escaping from it. There's no escaping from trying to evade technology and like say, oh, but I always did it this way, and let me continue to do that. There's no options. We've seen changes within even small law firms in India as a result of pandemic. And I'll give you a very simple example, right? We're a global organization. Most of our law firms send us digital invoices, except for maybe in India, where they would still send us paper invoices. And we were talking about 2020. We're not talking about 2000, right? But this happened until March of 2020. 2020. But as soon as the pandemic hit and things went into lockdown, it was just easier to bring that change, because law firms didn't have, they wanted to get paid at the end of the day. And sending, where were they going to send paper invoices to? They weren't going to send it to people's homes. So that change was so much easier. So I think sometimes it's a trigger, and unfortunately it's a trigger like pandemic, but I guess this is what it takes.
So it is what it is, right? So there's a very
Yeah.
interesting question from Nidhe Sushruta. She's asking, but then again, anyone who can handle technology can do all these tasks in that case, in reference to our previous discussion. It doesn't specifically require law graduates. What are your comments on that? And also, before we actually proceed with that, I'll request everyone to, whoever, I see a lot of people here on YouTube also, why don't you introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, where you logging in from, what do you do, and even post your questions, right? So we'll take them up as soon as we can. Please post your questions and share them with everyone, right? Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, please proceed with the answer.
So I don't think. I mean, I don't think that a contract can be reviewed by any normal BCom graduate. I think you need some legal education, and understanding of the law to be able to review a contract. So I disagree. I don't think a due diligence to actually know what issues are red flag issues or are hot issues that need to be dealt with can be dealt by any graduate. I think you absolutely need somebody who has gone through legal education and has been trained in those areas to understand that. So we are far from purely extracting data and looking at it. Now we also have technology that's analyzing data, and that's telling us, when a technology is looking at a contract and saying, hey, this is not your preferred provision, that's in the third party template, it needs to be revised to X. That's not just something that any graduate can do. So technology is getting smarter at a much faster level, I think. So I don't think we can just sit back and say, hey, this can be done by anybody. I still I'm safe from this entire thing. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. And a lot of people are thinking that AI tools are going to make everything such that you don't need lawyers. That's not true. Like, uh, tools are like, think of it like a first level intervention, and then even if they give you an analysis, that analysis has to be confirmed by a human lawyer, right? It only makes the job a little easier, and then there is a lot of human work. And the thing is that earlier there was certain work which was more of a clerical nature, or like just data collection, just looking at a lot of files. So those things are getting automated, and your more higher order judgments and your higher order functions and haven't got automated. They are probably going to get automated 100 years from now. We don't know how soon or later, but we are nowhere close to that. And that very smart AI lawyer is doing everything, and the lawyer has nothing to do. It's not like that. It's just
Yeah.
that very simple tasks have got automated, right? Things which are repetitive have got automated. Okay, so
And I would look at technology as an enabler. It is part of what we do. It's similar to, uh, I don't hail cab by raising my hand anymore. I actually put where I want to go into my app, and the cab comes. I don't have to go looking for it physically. It'll come to my doorstep. So I look at it as an enabler. It helps me do my things faster, thereby enabling me to do a lot more than I would have in my limited number of hours in a day.
absolutely. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to ask you was that what are the key challenges these days with any legal department, and how have things changed since pandemic, and even without the, irrespective of the pandemic, I believe it was already under a digital transformation. But what are the challenges you face as a head of a legal department?
Yeah, Ramanuj, I think one of the challenges that most legal departments face, whether you're big, small, is the challenge of having to do more with less. Most legal departments have limited resources. We don't have unlimited headcount. We don't have unlimited budget to go out and procure whatever services we need, whatever technology we need. So that's one of the biggest challenges that each legal department faces. The other challenge that a lot of us, of course, multi-jurisdictional businesses, so you're expected to know not just what is in your country, but in different countries, and expect to understand the in-depth industry knowledge that you need. So I think that's the other business challenge. The other business challenge that most legal departments face is staying abreast with the regulatory changes. And they're happening much more quicker, they are much more stringent. The new data privacy laws coming in, what are the requirements? You pretty much have to stay on top of everything that's happening in the industry, in the country, in the jurisdiction, and not just your own, but wherever your business is spread out. So I think those are some of the challenges to to work with, and most legal departments face that today.
Okay. Okay. And do you face any problem with, like when, like management, of course, would be another issue, right? Because you are like people are used to working with each other, but I am guessing in your case you might be having a remotely distributed team as well in different cities and different places. But is it has things become harder to collaborate and work together and deliver on schedule, and how is that work?
So I think in terms of collaboration, etc., given that we already were a telecom industry, we were spread across. Our legal team spread across 5 cities in 3 different continents, so different time zones, etc. So we were fairly well equipped to manage that. As an organization, we already had a semi-remote working policy, so people were used to working remote a few days in a month. Some people would do that. But obviously, the pandemic has taken a toll, right? Like I said, the need for a lot of legal from the legal team increased far more. Obviously, the resources did not. The budgets got slashed because of the uncertainty. So that was challenging more than the actual the workload, and people just burning out at after a certain point. I mean, there's only so much you can do working from home. There was no there's no difference between work from home and office, so you don't have that time where you actually cut off. Most people, would wake up in the morning and first thing they do is just open their emails, and they'd be doing that late into the night. And given that we are spread across different time zones, different jurisdictions, there's absolutely no restrictions. I think those were the challenges that most legal departments, again, when I speak to my peers, are facing and have been facing. And I think today, and when we talk with our peers, is everybody is looking at what the new world is going to look like, what the hybrid world is going to look like, how are people going to balance that personal life and business life, right? But also how are people going to some people will probably always work from home going from now, and which opens up a lot of opportunity. I also like to see what the brighter side is. I think this will allow a lot of women to continue to work who fell off the corporate ladder because of whatever reasons. So I think the pandemic and the entire work from home culture will open that up. So I think that's fantastic. It will open up.
That's a significant development, actually.
It definitely is. I think it's going to improve the DNI for most organizations. Hopefully, fingers crossed. The other thing is it's going to make us all of us a lot more global professions. Truly, I could be anybody could be sitting here in India, and they could
Working from USA, Singapore, or anywhere, right?
anywhere,
So
right?
that.
It's work from anywhere. So that's the other thing. But what it also does is there is no control on your time zone. There is no control on anything that you're coming up with. So So there are always the flip side, and then there is the brighter side. So we need to kind of have a balance there.
Right. So also, I was curious about what are the challenges legal teams are facing because of people working from home. Because the labor law would be different, data protection, concerns would be there. Most of the labor laws, employment laws, is created for assuming people are working from an office, right? They are not created for this kind of a situation where people are working from home. And initially, it looked like okay, it may be a temporary situation, but it's pretty much permanent as of now. I mean, I can't say permanent, but pretty much work from home is here to stay. And from
It
that
is.
perspective, what do you think about what are the challenges legal departments are facing from that perspective?
So I'll take
Even
an
I would
example.
say data protection would have been much easier. I'm sorry for interrupting. Data protection would have been much easier within a confined office space. But when people are working from home, how do you ensure confidentiality, data protection, and so many other things?
Yes, so that data protection does become a problem. We have our infosec team that's working round the clock to every day to upgrade our data security, and we are using various tools. I think we are constantly looking at what are the issues that could come up. But thankfully, thankfully, this has happened in 2020, and we have far more control. If this happened even in 2015, I don't think we would have that much control. So most organizations had moved to cloud, at least to a large extent. There are securities measures that are already in place by most organizations. Obviously, our USB ports are deactivated. We have different levels of VPN usernames and passwords, and people use Citrix and other kinds of things which can create that layer of security, and most organizations have to stay on top of it. um, is the risk far more? Yes, it is. It possibly is. You can't stop people from maybe taking a photograph on their phone and spreading any kind of they can share confidential information that way.
Yeah, even if you think of all the meetings that are happening online now, suddenly it's not confidential because you can record it and share it.
Yes, you don't know who's sitting there next to them and who could be overhearing your conversation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean these are challenges we are all working through, Ramanuj. We are obviously, there's a lot of education and training and awareness that is going through by our infosec teams, our compliance teams working together, and sometimes we can just hope that a big issue doesn't take place. But yes, definitely top of the mind concerns for most organizations.
Got it. So, one thing that comes to mind that this, so a lot of people have introduced themselves, and I would invite more questions. We are like we have around 20 minutes left. We have a lot of other questions to discuss as well, but do share your question. We have got a bunch of questions, and I think we can take up a couple of them at this point, and then we'll go back to our original agenda. So, Hardeep is asking several times actually about examples of tech tools that a lawyer can start using now will be helpful. And like if you
So,
can
so
take
these
from
are
this.
similar examples that I stated earlier, Ramanuj. Let's just say for M&A due diligence, right? You can look at tools like Kira, Seal, eBravia, which are out there in the market, and I'm sure that there's so many of those available, which can help in M&A due diligence today. Now, those tools are made for that. If you're looking at contract review, drafting, and negotiation, you can look at tools like LexCheck. You can look at LawGeeks, Legal Sifter, Black Boiler, Thought River. Um,
Spot Draft is a very famous Indian startup, in Indian started by Indian lawyers. Spot Draft.
yeah. So there are multiple tools that you can. I think if you're looking at a contract lifecycle management tool, you can look at an Aptus, iCertis. You can look at Spring CM. So it really depends which area of law and what do you want to do. you can easily, most of these tools are available for you to research online. If you just go ahead and say, let's say I want an M&A due diligence tool, you just put that in, and you'll get a list of these tools.
Awesome. Great. Priya Sogani saying real estate sector, current trends and solutions from artificial intelligence and arbitration in real estate sector for rent, purchase, sale and property managers. Advocate Priya Sogani, community head, flat and fraction. You want to say, you have anything to comment on this? Asking about current trends and solutions on AI and arbitration in real estate specific, if you have any ideas.
So I didn't get that question, Ramanuj.
Priya is asking if you have any idea about trends and solutions that are there for the real estate industry, especially in arbitration and contract review.
So I unfortunately don't have too much information about the real estate sector. One of the things obviously is lease management, which is big in real estate and would be. So I think there could be areas over there, but I don't specifically know of any trends within that sector.
Right. Okay. There's a question about do you think the present environment is much more high pressure than in the past? And how much of it has to do with tech?
How much of it has to do with?
Do with technology, like if the work environment is much more high pressure, and is it because of technology?
So is the work, I think every generation and every year you feel that this is the most high pressured year that you've had. Even if I look back, I don't see the pressure has decreased. The change of pressure may change. That could be different, but everybody, I think if you go and ask your predecessors, they'll say that there was far more pressure at their end. I think technology has made your life easier, but the pressures have changed in terms of the need for business is far more today. You are expected to respond to everything as of yesterday. You're supposed to be on top of a lot of things. So I think that is an added pressure. I think the regulatory challenges are an added pressure, which has changed very quickly. It continues to change very quickly, and the demands from regulators are far more stringent. I mean, we've seen that since 2008. That is changing a lot. So I don't think technology is the added pressure. I think it actually eases the pressure and helps you manage a lot more things in a better way.
That actually makes me think of another very important question about performance tracking softwares or productivity tracking softwares. And a lot of organizations, because people are working from home, they're resorting to these kind of softwares which can go to even the extent of surveillance on your computer, on your work computer,
So I think,
and so on.
sorry, Ramanuj, I lost you a little bit. I think
So,
you are
what
asking
are
about
your
productivity
thoughts
software.
on that? Productivity tracking, performance tracking softwares. In some cases they are pretty much so how, like, what are your thoughts on that? And I think these are being used by a lot of organizations today. So,
Yeah.
and it's going main, which may be adding to the pressure. But are these even legal, and what are the laws around it?
Yeah, so I think personal protection, data protection, etc. comes in here. So it depends on the organization and how they are dealing with it. We personally do not believe in adding surveillance to our employees. We work from a mode of trust, and we come from that. But you're right, there are organizations that are doing that. Where once you log in, they'll actually track websites that you are on. So how much time are you spending on social media versus how much time you're actually spending on at work. There are ethical issues. There are possibly legal issues in terms of data protection, etc. But we've intentionally stayed away from this.
Right. Uh, there's a question on do lawyer like what kind of skills should lawyers be focusing on and developing in order to thrive in this new environment.
Yeah, so this is something that I spoke on earlier, is the concept of T-shaped lawyer. So you have to have the in-depth knowledge of law. That is a given, but you have to supplement that law by knowing other skills such as your communication skills, project management skills, data analytical skills, use of technology, so negotiation skills. So there is a whole concept of T-shaped lawyer, which basically is you have to support your vertical line that goes down, is your law, your knowledge of law, which has to be supported by various other verticals, which make a whole rounded professional. Can I say that these are three skills that a lawyer needs? I don't think so. I think you have to be a fairly well-rounded professional. You have to be able to look at data and read it and analyze it, and in certain cases even understand financial numbers, depending on what area of law you're practicing in. You have to know technology today, that's a given. You have to have strong communication and collaboration skills. I think that is a must for any successful lawyer today. You have to know the concepts of agile, and Six Sigma, because most businesses are talking about these concepts. I mean, agile is a concept that most lawyers, when it came up, they said, oh, this is a software development concept. But you can't work in an organization in isolation. You have to know these concepts. So so I think one skill which I think as a lawyer is going to support you, and I think not just lawyers, I think any profession, is going to be that of curiosity. So you definitely have to be curious. You have to learn what's going on around you. You have to learn to upskill yourself. A lot of things that I'm doing today, I did not learn in law school. I learned it as I was going along, as the business demanded it, as the industry expanded. So I think that's going to be similar. That's going to help a lot of lawyers stay on top of things.
All right, so we have been flooded with questions at the moment. Still, let's take as many as possible. So one question that we have got is about if I want to be an in-house counsel, should I specialize or should I be a generalist lawyer?
As an in-house counsel, you can choose what area you want to specialize in, right? Typical in-house teams, I mean, depending on the size of the team, you could, if you're working in a smaller in-house team, then you definitely want to be a generalist, because you will be expected to do, or you could be doing litigation one day, you'll also be expected to negotiate contracts, you'll be expected to be on top of the compliance requirements. So depending on the size, but fairly large in-house teams are more focused. So if people are part of the commercial team, they'll be focused on contract negotiations, and closing the deals. But if you're part of the regulatory team, then you're focused on regulatory issues. If you're part of litigation, then you'll be working on that. So I think it definitely helps to deeply understand one area of law, which is your specialization. But at the same time, you have to have working knowledge of different areas. So tomorrow, if you're thrown in a I spend a lot of my time working in the area of contracts, because that was my area of interest, that was my area of specialization. I recently was offered to be also the head of compliance in my organization. I did have working knowledge, and now I knew that from that I could build up, and I could take things forward. So it is important to have working knowledge and an understanding of different areas. But yes, it's also important to be specialized at least in one area where you know that you are a master of that area.
Fantastic. So there's a question about are lawyers dealing with AI tools on a daily basis? So as a lawyer who's dealing with AI tools on a daily basis, do you face any problems with the prevalent tools? Do you feel the constant need to review the whole document? This is a question by Krishna. It
That's
looks
because
like
I'm not
some.
we are
somebody who
just as
uses.
humans, we are very, very finicky, right? So, do I feel the need? Maybe, but do I have the time? Maybe not. And sometimes, it's almost like, think about it, as you're growing in your career, right? You're going to have more and more to do. So, what do you start doing? Is you start delegating to people who are junior to you, and also helping them learn and grow. And it's exactly the same when you have a new junior attorney on your team. You will constantly monitor their work, and you will constantly review their work, just until the time that you have a sense of confidence, and you have trust, and you know that this person can handle this alone. The teaching technology is the same thing. When you start off initially, you'll feel the need to review everything, but over a period of time, it's helping you do your work so that you can expand to do different things, right? You're just not going to have the time, and if you do that, then there's no point of having spent the energy and the money, and the time in implementing an AI tool, because these things do take money, it takes time, it takes energy. And what is the point if you're not able to expand your areas of work?
No, I think also when you start using a AI tool, you can see some mistakes initially, but as it gets trained, it gets better and better over time. So no problem if you review it, but very soon you will get comfortable and you'll know what is the margin of error and what's like what you can rely on it for, what you cannot rely on it for. Those things
Absolutely.
become more clear. Uh, okay, so there's a question from Johanna, who's a law student. Ma'am, what about the areas where technology hasn't reached the villages and hamlets of our country? How will justice be served there during this heavy pandemic? Difficult question, but yeah, you have any?
Yeah, so I think this is I kind of touched upon this a little bit, is that there are multiple areas of law where technology hasn't touched. There are multiple people who are not able to use technology to the largest extent. So most legal tech companies focus on technology that they can sell to corporations. Very few are actually focusing on technology that will cater to the billions and billions of people. So yes, there are areas, regionally, there are areas of law which technology has untouched. But so we do have a long way to go. We have to, so in those areas, there's no way, right? You need a lawyer physically to be present. But I also think that there needs to be, a conversation. There needs to be some kind of a movement where people are focusing in that areas of law, and where they are enabling the billions and billions of people to the justice system, which is not happening today.
Right. So there are some questions about. There are some questions which are quite fantastical. Like there's a question on given that all e-courts and everything, should lawyers be anonymous so that there is no fake concept of face value in courts?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question, Ramanuj.
The question is that given that we now have e-courts, should lawyers act anonymously? Like, lawyers should be made to act anonymously, so there is no concept of face value in the court, and everything is judged only on merit.
I don't know the answer to that. I think some of these questions. I think I'm just
Are
gonna.
good to ask. Are good to ask even if there are no answers. Yeah, these are good exercise of our creativity.
Yeah, and some of these also require, a lot more conversation, a lot more. I don't think I'm an expert in that area to even give an opinion. I think these are conversations to have, and we also will need to see how things pan out, right? It's still early days, and it's going to change.
Right. Are you seeing any kind of resistance in the corporate environment or in the legal teams towards these changes and innovation and new technology?
So I think whenever a change happens, there are different set of people, right? There are people who are your change champions, who are supporting you, and who are people who will actually be supportive of that. And when there are always a certain set of people who resist change, who fight it, and I think the same is for corporate legal departments. Some people are open to change. They know it's a part of life. I think there's nothing more constant in this planet than change, right? So some people have that fair understanding and they're open to that, whereas some people are resistant to change inherently. It's just how they are wired, and that's what happens. So when an organization is going through change, people accept it, or some people don't, and then they fall off. So that's the similar situation with lawyers and legal departments too.
Okay. There's a question from Priya Neeth. She's asking, is a specific IT knowledge a prerequisite for cyber law? I mean, what are your, I mean,
No, I don't think you need to be an engineer or have
technical
degree
knowledge?
in IT. You do need to know how some of this works at a high level, but you don't necessarily need to know how to develop a code or to be able to be a cyber lawyer. So yes, it's like
And also, I think it is time to think of a new term like technology lawyer rather than cyber lawyer, because
yes,
cyber lawyer is
technology
some
lawyer is
small subset.
definitely a term. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and you don't need to be a software engineer to be a tech lawyer. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Technology law course, check out if you're interested in technology law. All right, so great. This was good. I think we have covered most ground. So if you have any message on to wrap up today's discussion, that'll be great.
Sure. I mean, my message to a lot of people is generally very simple. Most of the times, it's, a change is the only constant, like I just said, and we have to be accepting of that change. It's happening nonetheless, and I think we can use it to our benefit, and we can stay on top of it rather than rather than it controlling us. So that's what is important. I think we're in one of the most exciting times for the legal industry. There is a lot happening. There's a lot of future of people who can actually see and kind of go with the wave and not say that, but that's not how we did it. So I definitely think there are a lot of opportunities for young law graduates, and the opportunities are far more than I had when I graduated. So I think it's all exciting times.
Interesting, because there's a question that just came in on YouTube where Prithviraj is asking, why is it that so many Indian law graduates are struggling and they are not successful?
Are struggling with? I'm sorry, I lost you, Ramanuj. You're breaking up for me. Okay, I think we lost Ramanuj. He might probably have to drop off, and I didn't get that last question, but it was fantastic to be here. I'm just going to give him a minute and see if he's back.